So, guys, we wanted just to talk for about 10 minutes about just some of the themes of this, and we wanted to have on stage three of the biggest thought leaders in the world of attention at the moment. And perhaps, rather than me do the introductions, do you want to introduce yourself? Should we start with Katie? I mean, many people have seen this, but again, this will be broadcast many months in the future, so you'll have to start all over again. Katie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Mike. My name's Katie Hartley. I work at Dentsu, looking after product and innovation, and we've very heavily been invested in the attention space. So we've got this multi-year research program called the Attention Economy, and the ambition for that is just that we learn and then we apply and we do better things.
Fantastic. Well, Katie, thanks for joining us. Andy.
Thanks, Mike. My name's Andy Brown. I'm the CEO of the Attention Council. You're wondering, what's the Attention Council? The Attention Council is a not-for-profit group. It's a trade group which is trying to promote the use of attention metrics across the media and marketing industry. So, yes, that's me.
Brilliant. And one of the founders of the Attention Council is over here.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Sorin, Patilinet. I come from Mars, the company, and at Mars I lead the Center of Expertise for Advertising and Media Research. And yes, I've been part of the Attention Council from the start, involved in attention research for over 7 years now and leading the way at Mars. And after lunch, if you come over, you will hear all about our fantastic progress in attention.
Well, in that case, let's stay with you, Sorin, on that. I mean, we've got about 10 minutes, and I've got 3 questions, really. One thing is about the value of attention. What is the value of attention that you see yourself, and why are we talking about it now? So we'll start with that. So, from your point of view, in your research and your experience, Sorin, what is the value of this data or this approach?
I think the value of attention is really going back to the consumer. For years and years, we've been talking about CPMs and various other metrics that had nothing to do with the consumer, but purely with our advertising spend and our budget. We're finally talking about something that is about the consumer. How much attention do they pay to our brands? And we know that in theory that's declining, but we have ways to manage that. So it's all about the consumer. That's why I love attention in that space.
Katie, how about you? You've just given a talk about the value of attention, but what's the big difference here about this type of data from other in terms of a value equation for advertisers?
The links to outcomes, more is more when it comes to attention and outcomes. And, the more we're seeing it applied, the more we're kind of seeing the benefits of that.
So it's a simple value equation thing. This stuff just works.
Yeah, and I guess it is simple in that respect. Let's start off by avoiding the things that just don't get seen because there's zero value to that. But then of course, as we progress through this sort of adoption of attention, we will the propositions will become more sophisticated, and clients can begin to understand the value of attention for them. Because, as we know, there's so much nuance in all of this. So, we're working with averages and norms, but as we learn, let's understand the value of attention for a brand and, chip away at all these things we don't know.
Brilliant. Andy, why do you think this is happening now?
I think, as you've seen and as a couple of the speakers have talked about, there's been an explosion in choice in terms of media, explosion in the number of ads that people are exposed to, even though they may not see them or pay attention to them. I also think there's been a technology shift as well. I think if we think about much of the attention measurement that's been spoken about today, it's based on gaze metrics. That is easier now to potentially measure through more widespread and availability and acceptance of eye cameras and the technology that we use every day.
Brilliant. One of the themes of this morning has been about the cost and the value of attention, but this afternoon it's all going to be about getting an unfair share of attention. So can you give us well, Sorin is going to be part of your talk, but could you give us just one thing? If you have one tip that you would like to give away. What's a tip for getting an unfair share of attention?
I think it's joining my session, which starts at 7. But we've all heard this morning a lot about attention used for media planning. This afternoon, I hope, will be a little bit more about content. And for me, the number one tip is understand how attention varies second by second within your content to understand whether you can optimize that content.
So it's about the actual creative itself as a amplification or a multiplier.
Exactly. Are the eyes on screen or are the eyes somewhere else?
Katie, when you're going around talking to clients about it, I know that you sort of sprinkle in some top tips. Can you give us one top tip for getting an unfair share of attention?
I guess we know that sites that have less ad clutter are particularly effective. But I guess in terms of adopting the approaches that are sort of available out there now, of which you sell one of those, Mike.
This is awkward.
Do you want to mention? But they are obviously incredibly helpful. And as we've been applying, our proposition, the thing that's been so interesting actually is to see how easy it is to divert away from the inventory that is less likely to be seen at all, and how actually it's not driving the cost up, because actually at this moment in time in the open market, actually the pricing is just also similar. So actually you're buying more attention for the same price.
Yes, this is a theme that Sam Gaunt from GSK was about. He was very keen to say that there's good and there's bad out there, but he wasn't going to tell you what was good or bad, because he wants to keep that information to himself, which I think actually, given the Attention Council, Andy, has both, well, it has on the buy side and the sell side and representation from the providers there. From your point of view, as a publisher, what sort of tips do you give the publishers as part of, or what are the publishers telling you as a way of getting an unfair share of attention?
I think there's a couple of things in there, Mike. I think number one, and I think it's same for buy and sell side, whether you're talking about advertising or whether you're talking about content, is respect the consumer. Put the consumer at the heart of everything that you're doing, and you won't go too far wrong in terms of growing your share.
There's a win-win sort of thing.
Exactly. Everything rises. I think the other thing which we haven't talked about here, and this has been very digital-centric, the conversation today, and we're talking about making decisions within digital, across formats, etc. But also, we're heading into a world of cross-media audience measurement. New CEO of Project Origin announced yesterday. Suddenly we're going to have a whole series of reach and frequency calculations, deduplicated, probabilistic exposures to digital and TV. How are you going to start to differentiate those different impressions? And I think some of the more enlightened publishers are already running towards that and are beginning to look at how their content works across different platforms and the impact that has on the advertising that goes around.
Yeah, when you run a newspaper and a news website and a TV station, suddenly, having separate buckets doesn't make sense. And a little bit of an ad for Lumen. We are launching a TV panel in the UK with our chums at T-Vision, which should be up and running in September, which is very exciting. And we also that capability is already available via Dentsu in the States. But listen, that's enough of advertising. We've already right, just before we break for lunch, thank you very much for it. This is the second year that Attention has run at MadFest. It may well be the last year we run it, because the guys at MadFest see this as an opportunity to have an entirely new standalone conference. And so next year it may be even bigger, but it might be separate. Who knows? So I'm sure, as thought leaders in the space, you will be invited back, and we will want to hear your stories. What are you going to be talking about next year? And should we start again with Sorin? What's going to be the story that you bring to the table next year?
So this year I will talk together with our friends from Realize about creative optimization as a pre-test. Next year I will talk together with them about in-flight optimization using attention.
So it's the actual use of the data to optimize things in real time?
In real time.
well, which I know what you're doing already. So there is you're fairly confident that it's going to work because
Pressure is all on
exactly.
them. I can bring the ads.
Andy, what do you think you're going to be talking about next year?
I come out of a classic market and media research, media measurement background, and we know attention metrics work. There's fantastic case studies. Go to the Attention Council website, you'll find hundreds of case studies showing it works. However, there's been very little in the way of experimental design looking at exactly how attention works and its limitations and where it works best, etc. And I think, as more dollars are spent behind attention metrics, I think it behoves us to do more work from an experimental perspective.
To really sort of check the numbers underlying it works in practice, but does it work in theory?
Exactly.
Very good. And Katie, what are you going to be talking about next year?
I think where we've got to with digital feels like we're now kind of getting the basics right with this predictive model, but I would like to see us extend that into other channels, so probably starting with TV. I'd like us to have that same predictive model, therefore at a kind of spot level we know what we're really getting out of that.
Brilliant. Well, guys, like I said, very difficult to compete for lunch, but we seem to have done it quite well. We'll stop now. Thank you very much for your time. A round of applause for the for the prize. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.